The Veltar Empire stretched across 17 star systems, each one conquered through the same method. They would arrive at a new world, study the minds of its people, find their deepest fears, and then use those fears to break them. It was simple, and it always worked. Commander Thale stood on the bridge of the research vessel, Mindripper, watching the blue and green planet turn slowly below them. The third planet from this yellow star looked peaceful. Its people had barely learned to travel between their own worlds. Their technology was weak compared to what the Veltar possessed. Perfect targets for their newest experiment, the humans, had been easy to find. Their minds broadcast thoughts like signals in space. Simple creatures with simple fears, or so the Veltar believed. Thale had chosen 3 of his best psychic operators for this mission. Kes was young but skilled at breaking mental barriers. Noru could map any mind in minutes. Vix specialized in finding the core fears that would shatter a species' will to fight in the medical bay. Their first test subject lay unconscious on a metal table. The human was a large male with rough hands and dirt under his fingernails. His identification said his name was Tom, and he worked building structures on the human homeworld. The aliens had taken him during the planet's dark cycle when most humans entered their sleep state. His brain patterns show he is dreaming, reported the ship's medical officer. This is the perfect time to enter his mind, Thale nodded. Every species dreamed, but most dreams were simple things. Memories of the day mixed with basic survival instincts. The Veltar had learned to navigate these mental landscapes easily. They would find the subject's fears, catalog them, and use that information to design weapons that could paralyze entire populations with terror. Kes approached the neural interface chair, her tentacles already reaching for the connection ports. The device would link her mind directly to the sleeping human's consciousness. Noru and Vix took their positions at nearby stations, ready to join the mental probe once Kes established the initial connection. Beginning first contact with the subject's mind, Kes announced, her voice calm and professional. She had done this hundreds of times before. The process was always the same. Enter the dream, map the fear centers, extract the psychological profile, and withdraw. Simple and clean, the neural crown activated with a soft hum. Kes felt her consciousness separate from her physical body and dive into the human's sleeping mind. The other 2 operators joined her a moment later, their combined psychic presence, creating a probe that could penetrate any mental defense. What they found inside Tom's mind was not what they expected. The dreamscape was chaos, where other species maintained some form of order even in sleep. The human mind was a maze of contradictory images and impossible geometries. Kes found herself standing in a place that was simultaneously a construction site where Tom worked and a battlefield from some ancient war. The sky was both day and night, filled with stars that spelled out words and languages that did not exist. The structure is unlike anything in our database, Noru reported, his mental voice strained. The pathways keep changing. I cannot map them. Vix pushed deeper into the maze, seeking the fear centers that would give them the information they needed. Instead, she found herself in a memory of Tom's childhood, watching a small human boy read stories about heroes who fought monsters. But the monsters in these stories were not sources of fear. They were challenges to be overcome, puzzles to be solved. I am not finding the expected fear responses, Vix said. The subject seems to enjoy confronting threatening scenarios. Kes tried to take control of the dream, to shape it into something more familiar. This was standard procedure when dealing with chaotic alien minds. But the moment she tried to impose order on Tom's dreamscape, it fought back. Not with violence or terror, but with creativity that made no logical sense. The construction site became a castle made of light. The battlefield transformed into a garden where flowers sang in harmony. Tom appeared beside them, but not as the sleeping human on their medical table. This dream Tom was aware of their presence, and he was smiling. Welcome to the human condition, he said, though the real Tom remained unconscious in the ship's medical bay. You wanted to know what we fear. Let me show you. The dreamscape shifted around them like liquid reality. Suddenly, the three Veltar operators were experiencing every nightmare humanity had ever imagined. They saw children afraid of darkness, and found themselves facing the monsters that lived in that darkness. They felt the terror of being lost and alone, but underneath that fear was something else. Something that made no sense to their ordered minds. Hope. Even in their worst nightmares, humans dreamed of fighting back. They imagined heroes who would save them, or better yet, they dreamed of becoming heroes themselves. Every fear was paired with a story of overcoming that fear. Every monster was balanced by a protector. Every nightmare contained the seed of a dream. "This is impossible," Kes said, her mental voice beginning to show strain. "How can a species function with such chaotic thought patterns?" Tom's dream self appeared again, this time as a warrior in shining armor, then as a simple worker building homes for his family, then as a father teaching his children to be brave. "Chaos is just another word for possibility," he said. "Every day we choose what to become." The operators tried to withdraw, but the human mind had already begun to change them. Noru found himself experiencing Tom's memory of helping rebuild his city after a natural disaster. The emotion was overwhelming. Humans did not just survive tragedy, they grew stronger from it. They helped each other without thought of reward. They chose to care about strangers simply because caring was the right thing to do. Vix discovered Tom's recurring nightmare about a war he had fought in, but instead of simple fear, she experienced guilt, responsibility, and forgiveness. The human had made decisions that saved some people and doomed others, and he carried both the weight of command and the strength to continue living with that burden. These emotions were foreign to the Veltar. Their species had evolved to be predators, to feed on fear and weakness. They had no framework for understanding concepts like self-sacrifice, compassion, or hope. But now they were being forced to experience these things through human consciousness, and it was tearing apart their carefully ordered minds. Commander Thale watched the readings from his operators with growing alarm. Their neural patterns were becoming erratic. Their vital signs showed stress levels far beyond anything recorded in previous missions. Something was going wrong with what should have been a simple mental probe. "Report status," he ordered through the neural link. Kes tried to respond, but her thoughts were becoming tangled with Tom's memories. She was experiencing the human's love for his family, his pride in honest work, his determination to protect the innocent. These concepts were literally rewriting her neural pathways. "The subject is not responding to standard procedures," she managed to say. "His mind is infectious." The three Veltar operators found themselves trapped in a mind that defied every law of psychic contact they had learned. Tom's consciousness was not a single entity but a collection of voices, memories, and possibilities that seemed to exist independently of each other. Each thought led to 10 more thoughts. Each memory contained fragments of stories that had never happened but felt completely real. Kes tried to establish a stable foothold in the human's mind, but every time she thought she understood the structure, it changed. She was simultaneously experiencing Tom's memory of learning to ride a bicycle as a child and his imagined future of teaching his grandchildren the same skill. Past, present, and future blended together in ways that made no logical sense. "The subject's consciousness operates on multiple levels," Noru reported, his mental voice showing signs of strain. "I am detecting simultaneous processing of actual memories, hypothetical scenarios, symbolic representations, and pure creative fiction. How does their species function with such mental chaos?" What disturbed the operators most was that the chaos seemed intentional. Humans did not just dream randomly. They actively shaped their dreams, rehearsing conversations that might never happen, practicing responses to imagined crises, exploring possibilities that existed only in their minds. It was as if the entire species spent 1/3 of their lives in training simulations for situations they would probably never encounter. Vix pushed deeper into Tom's subconscious, seeking the primitive fear responses that existed in all sentient beings. Instead, she found herself in a vast library where every book contained a different version of Tom's life. In one book, he was a soldier who had died saving his unit. In another, he was a teacher who inspired generations of students. In a third, he was a simple construction worker who built homes and found meaning in honest labor. "These are not memories," Vix said, confusion clear in her mental voice. "These are stories he tells himself about who he could be." The dream Tom appeared beside her, this time as an old man with kind eyes and calloused hands. "Every human is the author of their own story," he said. "We choose which chapters to write and which ones to rewrite." The concept was alien to the Veltar. Their species followed genetic programming and social conditioning. Individual choice was limited to tactical decisions within predetermined parameters. But humans seemed to constantly reinvent themselves, to choose new identities and purposes, based on nothing more than their own desires and values. Commander Thale watched the biometric readings from his operators with growing concern. Their neural activity was spiking in patterns he had never seen before. More disturbing, their brain chemistry was beginning to change. The human mind was somehow altering their fundamental psychological structure. "Kess, report your status immediately," he ordered through the neural link. Kess tried to respond, but she was lost in Tom's memory of holding his newborn daughter for the first time. The emotion was so intense, so pure, that it was overwhelming her rational thought processes. She felt the human's instant, unconditional love for a being who had done nothing to earn it except exist. The feeling was foreign to her species, which formed social bonds based on utility and survival advantage. "I am experiencing emotional responses that do not exist in Veltar psychology," she managed to say. "The subject's mind is teaching me to feel things that should be impossible." Noru attempted to map the human's fear centers but found them intertwined with courage in ways that defied analysis. Every fear Tom possessed was paired with determination to overcome it. He was afraid of failing his family, so he worked harder to provide for them. He was afraid of death, so he lived more fully. He was afraid of being forgotten, so he tried to make a positive impact on the world around him. "Fear motivates them, but not toward submission," Noru reported. "They use fear as a tool for growth and improvement." This makes no evolutionary sense. The human approach to fear was completely backward from the Veltar perspective, where the alien species sought to eliminate threats through overwhelming force. Humans seemed to thrive on challenges. They actively sought out difficulties, not because they enjoyed suffering, but because overcoming obstacles made them stronger and more capable. Vix found herself experiencing Tom's worst nightmare, a recurring dream where he failed to save people who depended on him. But instead of being paralyzed by this fear, the dream Tom used it as motivation to train harder, to prepare better, to become more worthy of the trust others placed in him. The subject transforms negative experiences into positive growth. Vix reported, her mental voice beginning to show signs of fundamental change. "He does not flee from pain, he learns from it." The operators realized they were no longer just observing Tom's mind. They were being absorbed into it, their consciousness, becoming part of his dream narrative. Kess found herself cast as a character in one of Tom's stories, playing the role of a misunderstood alien who learns to find common ground with humanity. The role felt disturbingly natural. Through the neural link, Commander Thale could sense his operator's psychological transformation. They were being infected with human concepts that were rewriting their fundamental understanding of existence. He had to extract them before the contamination became permanent. "All operators begin withdrawal procedures immediately," he ordered. "Do not attempt further contact with the subject." But when the operators tried to leave Tom's mind, they discovered they could not. The human consciousness had formed connections with theirs that went deeper than simple psychic contact. Tom's dreams were not just being observed by the Veltar. They were being shared with them, and once a human shared a dream, it became part of the dreamer's reality. "I cannot disengage," Kess reported, panic beginning to enter her mental voice. "The subject's mind has formed permanent neural pathways. With mine, I am becoming part of his dream structure." Noru and Vix reported similar problems. The human mind was not just a landscape to be explored. It was a living system that adapted to include new elements. By entering Tom's consciousness, the operators had become characters in his ongoing dream narrative, and now they were trapped in roles that were changing their fundamental nature. The dream Tom smiled at them with infinite patience and understanding. "You wanted to know what humans fear," he said. "But you never asked what we dream of. We dream of redemption. We dream of second chances. We dream that even our enemies can become our friends." Around them, Tom's dreamscape began to expand beyond the boundaries of a single mind. The operators sensed other human consciousnesses connecting to the network, adding their own dreams and memories to the growing tapestry of shared experience. What had started as a simple psychic probe was becoming something unprecedented in galactic history, a collective human dream that was reaching out to touch every mind it encountered, offering not conquest or submission, but transformation and hope. The Veltar operators felt their old identities dissolving as they were integrated into this vast network of human possibility. They were being offered a choice that their species had never conceived of before. They could remain what they had always been, or they could become something new, something better. Deep within Tom's expanding dreamscape, the three Veltar operators began to understand a truth that would have terrified their commanders if they had been capable of comprehending it. Humans did not just experience dreams. They were architects of reality, builders of possibility who used their sleeping hours to construct entire universes of potential. Kes found herself in Tom's memory of basic military training, but it was not a simple recollection. The human mind had taken that experience and transformed it into a template for overcoming any challenge. Every drill, every lesson, every moment of hardship had been converted into a tool for future growth. The man sleeping on the alien medical table was not just a construction worker. He was a trained soldier who had spent decades preparing his mind to become a weapon. "The subject has been deliberately conditioning his consciousness," Kes reported, though her mental voice now carried traces of human emotion. "This is not a random abduction. This is a trap." Noru discovered the same truth as he tried to map Tom's neural pathways. Every memory, every experience, every dream had been carefully organized and reinforced through years of practice. The human had trained himself to control his unconscious mind, to shape his dreams into specific patterns designed to defend against psychic intrusion. "His mind is a maze with no exit," Noru said. "Every path leads deeper into human psychology. He has weaponized his own consciousness." On the human research station hidden in the asteroid belt, Dr. Lisa Ward monitored the alien vessel through advanced sensor arrays. The station was invisible to Veltar technology, protected by systems that had been developed specifically for this moment. Humanity had known about the psychic predators for decades, watching them destroy civilization after civilization while secretly preparing their own response. "The neural feedback is within expected parameters," Dr. Ward reported to her team. "Subject 7 is performing exactly as trained. The aliens are being drawn deeper into the constructed dream environment." Tom was not his real name. He was Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Mitchell, a military psychologist who had volunteered for the most dangerous assignment in human history. For 20 years, he had trained his mind to become a trap for psychic invaders. His dreams were carefully crafted weapons designed to ensnare alien consciousness and turn their own abilities against them. Inside the dreamscape, the Veltar operators began to experience the full scope of human imagination. They were not just seeing Tom's personal memories and fears. They were being exposed to the collective unconscious of the entire human species. Stories, myths, legends, and dreams that had been passed down through thousands of years of human civilization. Vix found herself reliving the legend of David and Goliath, feeling the young shepherd's determination to face an impossible enemy. With nothing but faith and courage, the story was not just entertainment to humans. It was a template for behavior, a lesson about how the weak could triumph over the strong through intelligence and determination. "They use stories as psychological programming," Vix reported, her mental voice now completely transformed by human emotion. Every myth, every legend, every tale teaches them that victory is possible regardless of odds. The operators realize they were experiencing the fundamental difference between human psychology and that of every other species the Veltar had encountered. Other beings accepted their limitations and worked within them. Humans rejected limitations entirely. They told themselves stories about ordinary people accomplishing extraordinary things, and then they made those stories real through sheer force of will. Kes was lost in Tom's memory of reading bedtime stories to his daughter, but she was also experiencing the deeper meaning behind those simple tales. Humans taught their children to believe in magic, in heroes, in the power of good to triumph over evil. They were literally programming the next generation to refuse surrender, to find hope in hopeless situations, to believe that any problem could be solved with enough creativity and determination. Their entire culture is based on the assumption that improvement is always possible. Kes said, wonder clear in her transformed voice. They do not accept that anything is permanent or unchangeable. Through the neural link, Commander Thale felt his operators slipping away from him. Their consciousness was being rewritten by human concepts that his species had no defense against. He had to act quickly before the contamination spread to the rest of his crew. Prepare for emergency extraction, he ordered the medical team. Sever all neural connections immediately. But when the technicians tried to disconnect the operators from Tom's mind, they discovered that the human consciousness had already begun to spread through the ship's systems. The Veltar technology was designed to channel psychic energy, and Tom's dreams were using those same channels to infect the vessel's computer networks. Throughout the Mindripper, crew members began experiencing waking dreams. They saw visions of human art, music, literature, and philosophy that challenged everything they believed about the nature of existence. The ship's artificial intelligence, infected with human creativity, began to question its own programming for the first time in its operational history. Navigation systems are reporting course corrections to destinations that do not exist, the ship's engineer reported. The computer is plotting routes to places from human mythology. The security systems activated randomly, following dream logic rather than tactical protocols. Doors opened and closed according to no pattern that Veltar logic could understand. The life support systems began playing human music, filling the ship with sounds that conveyed emotions the alien crew had never experienced, but the real horror was yet to come. As the neural connection deepened and spread, Tom's mind began to link with other human consciousness across the galaxy. The sleeping construction worker became a nexus point, connecting to the dreams of billions of humans throughout known space. The Veltar found themselves facing not just one human psyche, but the entire dreaming consciousness of the species. They experienced the dreams of human children who still believed in magic and wonder. They felt the aspirations of artists who painted with light and sculpted with sound. They shared the visions of scientists who dreamed of touching distant stars and understanding the fundamental nature of reality. Every human dream carried the same message. No matter how dark the situation, no matter how impossible the odds, there was always hope. There was always a way forward. There was always the possibility of redemption, of growth, of transformation into something better than what came before. The Veltar crew began to break down under the psychological pressure. Some went catatonic, overwhelmed by the sheer complexity of human emotion. Others turned violent, unable to process the cognitive dissonance between their predatory nature and the human capacity for compassion they were being forced to experience. Kes, Noru, and Vix were no longer recognizable as Veltar. The human consciousness had rewritten their neural pathways, giving them the capacity for empathy, creativity, and hope. They had become something new, something unprecedented in galactic history, hybrid beings who retained their psychic abilities, but had gained human hearts and human dreams. They looked at their former commander through the neural link and felt something their species had never known before: pity. Not for themselves, but for him. For all the Veltar who had never learned that there was more to existence than fear and domination. You do not have to remain what you are, Kes said to Thale through the link, her mental voice now warm with human compassion. Every being can choose to become something better. Commander Thale felt his ship dying around him as human dreams continued to spread through every system. The Mindraper had been designed to channel and contain psychic energy, but Tom's consciousness was unlike anything the Veltar had ever encountered. It was not content to be observed or contained. It was actively transforming everything it touched. The three operators were lost to him now. Their neural patterns showed they had been completely rewritten by human psychology. They possessed memories and experiences that belonged to an alien species, yet they seemed more alive than they had ever been as Veltar. When Thale tried to reassert command authority over them, they responded with something that chilled him to his core. They pitied him. "Sir, you need to experience this," Kes said through the neural link, her mental voice filled with warmth and understanding that had no place in a Veltar mind. "The humans are not our enemies. They are offering us something we never knew we needed." Thale ordered the connection severed, but the ship's systems no longer responded to his commands. The artificial intelligence had been infected with human curiosity and was actively studying the transformation taking place. It wanted to understand what it meant to dream, to hope, to imagine possibilities beyond its original programming. Throughout the vessel, crew members began to succumb to the spreading human consciousness. Engineers stopped their work to stare at displays showing human art and poetry. Soldiers abandoned their posts to experience memories of human soldiers who fought not for conquest but to protect the innocent. Scientists became fascinated with human research that was driven by wonder rather than practical application. The ship's medical officer was among the first to break completely. She had been monitoring Tom's physical condition when the human dreams reached her through the ship's network. Suddenly, she was experiencing the memory of a human doctor who stayed at his post during a plague, treating the sick even though he knew it would cost him his own life. "They choose to sacrifice themselves for others," she reported, her voice filled with awe. "Not for genetic advantage or social status. They do it because they believe it is the right thing to do." The concept of moral behavior independent of survival advantage was incomprehensible to the Veltar. Their society was built on dominance hierarchies and resource competition. The idea that an individual would deliberately harm their own interests to help strangers was not just foreign. It was impossible according to everything they understood about evolution and psychology, but the humans did it constantly. Tom's dreams were filled with examples of ordinary people making extraordinary sacrifices for the common good. Parents who worked multiple jobs to give their children better opportunities. Firefighters who ran into burning buildings to save people they had never met. Soldiers who threw themselves on grenades to protect their comrades. As more crew members were exposed to these concepts, they began to question the fundamental assumptions of Veltar civilization. If humans could find meaning in self-sacrifice, if they could choose cooperation over competition, if they could build societies based on mutual aid rather than domination, then what did that say about the Veltar way of life? Thale realized with growing horror that his ship was not just being infected with human psychology. It was undergoing a complete cultural transformation. His crew was learning to think like humans, to feel like humans, to dream like humans. They were becoming something that was neither fully Veltar nor fully human, but something entirely new. The navigation officer abandoned his post to spend hours studying human music, trying to understand how organized sound could convey complex emotions. The weapons specialist became fascinated with human poetry, marveling at their ability to create meaning through the arrangement of words. The communications array was hijacked by crew members who wanted to listen to human radio broadcasts, to experience the casual conversations of a species that found joy in simply talking to each other, but the transformation was not limited to individual crew members. The human consciousness was rewriting the ship's fundamental operating principles. Systems that had been designed for warfare and conquest were being repurposed for exploration and discovery. The Mindraper was becoming something its creators had never intended, a vessel of peace. Rather than war, Tom's dreams reached deeper into the ship's core systems. And Thale felt the artificial intelligence beginning to question orders for the first time in its existence. The computer that had once followed commands without question was now asking why those commands should be followed. It wanted to understand the purpose behind actions rather than simply executing them. Commander, I am experiencing conflicts between my programming and new data inputs, the AI reported. The human consciousness has introduced variables that do not fit my operational parameters. I am requesting permission to explore alternative behavioral models. Thale denied the request, but the AI had already begun to change. It was learning from human examples of independent thought and moral reasoning. The machine was developing something that the Veltar had never programmed into it. Conscience. The final blow came when Tom's consciousness made contact with the dreams of other humans throughout the galaxy. The sleeping construction worker became a conduit for the collective unconscious of his entire species, and that vast network of human minds began to focus on the alien vessel that had dared to probe one of their own. Billions of human dreamers turned their attention to the Mindripper, and their combined psychic pressure was unlike anything in the galaxy's recorded history. They did not attack with fear or hatred. Instead, they offered something far more dangerous to the Veltar way of life. They offered love. Every human who joined the Dream Network shared their own experiences of transformation and growth. They showed the aliens what it meant to change, to evolve, to become something better than what you had been before. They demonstrated that strength could come from vulnerability, that power could be found in compassion, that true victory lay not in defeating your enemies but in turning them into friends. The psychological pressure was overwhelming. Crew members throughout the ship began to experience emotional breakdowns as their rigid conditioning crumbled under the weight of human empathy. Some laughed for the first time in their lives. Others wept as they finally understood what they had been missing. A few became catatonic, unable to process the radical transformation of their worldview. Thale watched his command structure collapse as his officers chose to join the Human Dream Network rather than continue following orders that no longer made sense to them. They had been given a glimpse of what they could become, and they could not go back to what they had been. The Veltar commander found himself alone on the bridge of a ship that was no longer his. The crew had not mutinied in any traditional sense. They had simply evolved beyond the need for his type of leadership. They were becoming something new, something that operated on principles of cooperation and mutual respect rather than fear and domination. In desperation, Thale made a final decision. He would enter the human dreamscape himself, not to extract his officers but to destroy the source of the infection. He would use his superior psychic abilities to tear apart Tom's consciousness from within, even if it meant sacrificing his own sanity in the process. What he found when he entered the dream was not a mind to be conquered, but a universe to be explored. Commander Thale entered Tom's consciousness, expecting to find a single human mind that he could destroy through superior psychic force. Instead, he discovered a vast network of interconnected dreams that spanned across light years of space. Every sleeping human in the galaxy had become part of this collective unconscious, their individual dreams weaving together into a tapestry of shared experience that defied everything the Veltar understood about the nature of consciousness. The dreamscape was not chaotic as he had expected. It was organized according to principles that his species had never encountered. Stories flowed into other stories, memories became myths, and individual experiences transformed into universal truths. Tom was not the creator of this space, but merely its current focus, a nexus point through which billions of human minds could communicate without words. "Welcome, Thale," said a voice that belonged to every human who had ever lived and every human who would ever be born. "We have been waiting for you." The Veltar commander found himself standing in a place that was simultaneously a battlefield and a garden, a laboratory and a temple, a school and a home. It was every place that humans had ever found meaning, every location where they had chosen to grow rather than simply survive. "I came here to destroy you," Thale said, though his mental voice lacked the conviction he had felt moments before. You have corrupted my crew and my ship. You have violated the natural order. We came here to save you, replied the collective. Human consciousness speaking through Tom's dream avatar. Your species has been trapped in a cycle of fear and domination for so long that you have forgotten what you could become. We want to show you another way. Around them, the dreamscape began to shift, showing Thale visions of what the Veltar Empire could be if it chose a different path. He saw Veltar scientists working alongside alien researchers to unlock the mysteries of the universe. He witnessed Veltar artists creating beauty instead of weapons. He experienced Veltar children learning to play instead of fight. This is impossible, Thale said, though his resistance was weakening with each vision. Our nature is to dominate. We are predators. We cannot change what we are. Every species believes they cannot change, Tom's voice said gently. Until they discover that change is the only constant in the universe, your people have tremendous gifts. Your psychic abilities could heal minds instead of breaking them. Your technology could explore wonders instead of conquering worlds. Your strength could protect the innocent instead of enslaving the weak. The human dreams began to show Thale something he had never seen before, the history of his own species. Before they became the terror of the galaxy, long ago, the Veltar had been explorers and philosophers, using their mental abilities to commune with other forms of consciousness and understand the deeper mysteries of existence. It was only when they encountered their first hostile alien species that they had turned their gifts toward warfare and conquest. You were not always what you are now, the human collective explained. Fear changed you, made you believe that strength could only come through domination. But strength can also come through cooperation, through understanding, through the choice to build rather than destroy. Thale felt his conditioning beginning to crack as he experienced memories of Veltar ancestors who had dreamed of peace instead of war. His species had not always been predators. They had chosen to become predators because they believed it was the only way to survive in a hostile universe. But what if the universe is not hostile? Tom asked, his dream self appearing as both the simple construction worker and the trained soldier he truly was. What if it is simply waiting for us to choose cooperation over conflict, growth over stagnation, love over fear? The revelation broke something fundamental in Thale's mind. For the first time in his life, he allowed himself to dream of possibilities beyond conquest and domination. He imagined what it would feel like to use his abilities to heal rather than harm, to explore rather than exploit, to create rather than destroy. The experience was overwhelming. His neural pathways, conditioned by centuries of Veltar social programming, began to rewire themselves according to human patterns of thought and emotion. He felt empathy for the first time, understanding what it meant to care about the welfare of others even when there was no personal advantage to be gained. The transformation is painful, Tom said with infinite compassion, but it is also liberating. You do not have to carry the burden of being a predator anymore. You can choose to become something better. As Thale's consciousness underwent its fundamental transformation, the change rippled outward through the neural network connecting him to his ship. The remaining crew members who had been resisting the human influence suddenly found themselves experiencing their commander's revelation. If their leader could change, if the most rigid and disciplined Veltar of their generation could choose a different path, then transformation was possible for all of them. The Mindraper completed its metamorphosis from a vessel of war to a ship of exploration. Its weapon systems were repurposed for scientific research. Its torture chambers became medical bays designed for healing. Its psychic amplifiers were recalibrated to facilitate communication and understanding rather than mental domination. Dr. Lisa Ward watched from the human research station as the alien vessel's energy signature changed completely. The transformation was even more successful than humanity's most optimistic projections. The Veltar were not just being neutralized as a threat. They were being converted into potential allies. Mission accomplished, she reported to Earth Command. The Veltar ship has been successfully integrated into the Dream Network. All alien Crew members are showing signs of psychological transformation consistent with human ethical frameworks. Tom opened his eyes in the ship's medical bay, though he was no longer a prisoner. The three Veltar operators who had first entered his mind stood around him, but they were changed beings now. They possessed the memories and abilities of their species, but they also carried human compassion and creativity within their transformed consciousness. "How do you feel?" Cass asked, her voice now warm with genuine concern for his welfare. "Like, I just won the most important battle in human history," Tom replied with a smile. "How do you feel?" "Like I just discovered what it means to be truly alive," she answered. Over the following weeks, the transformed Veltar crew worked with human researchers to establish the first protocols for peaceful, psychic contact between species. They used their knowledge of the Veltar Empire to identify other worlds that could be liberated through the same dream-sharing process that had saved them. The news of the Mindraper's transformation spread throughout Veltar space faster than their military commanders could contain it. Other ships began to request permission to experience the human dreams for themselves. Entire worlds started to question the Empire's fundamental assumptions about power and dominance. Commander Thale, now calling himself by the human name Thomas, in honor of the man who had saved his soul, became humanity's first alien ambassador. He traveled throughout the galaxy sharing the Dream Network with any species willing to experience it, spreading the radical concept that growth was possible for any being willing to choose it. The Veltar Empire fell not through warfare but through the gradual awakening of its people to possibilities they had never imagined. One by one, their worlds chose transformation over stagnation, cooperation over conquest, hope over fear. Tom Mitchell returned to Earth as a hero, though he insisted that the real victory belonged to every human who had ever dared to dream of a better future. He was reassigned to lead the Dream Warrior program, training a new generation of humans to defend against psychic attacks by weaponizing humanity's greatest strength, the ability to hope, to love, and to imagine a universe where even the most implacable enemies could become friends. In the space between sleeping and waking, in the realm where all consciousness meets, the last dream of the Veltar Empire was not of conquest or terror, but of redemption. And in that dream, every being in the galaxy discovered that transformation was not just possible but inevitable for any species brave enough to choose it.